Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Rob from Inspire Chiropractic and Wellness Studio here. You know what? It's September. It's body signals time. Topic of the month is headaches. This is probably, we see patients in our office. I say this is something that I get talked about to every single day that I'm in the office. Somebody wants to know, different types of headaches. How this is affecting them. They bring it up in their symptoms, and this is a problem that I've seen in practice that has literally spans across every demographic, every age group. We see it in kids, we see it in adults, we see it in seniors, and it goes straight through the board, right? So, I mean, there's nobody can hide from this. It's through all occupations. We see it in students, we see it in blue collar workers, we see it in desk workers. It's like this is probably one of the most common conditions that we see. The difference is really is how it affects their lives. I have a contractor that comes in the office who gets migraine headaches, and let me tell you, he's shared with me that it's a bear of a day if he has a migraine headache that kicks up. I've also I have a lot of nurses who come into our practice, and I'll tell you what, the most common thing that I see with nurses is headaches, neck pain. These are all things that are part of their job, part of their task of managing the hospital floor. And really, I see it in those populations as well as I see it in desk workers, professionals, whether they're lawyers or assistants. We're seeing that overuse of technology and computers is really putting a damper on it, right? On life, and especially if I gave you a calendar with 365 days on it, mark which days you don't want to have a headache. You'd put all of them, right? So, it's kind of one of those things that we see. And tonight we're going to talk about the most common types of headaches here. So we're going to get into stress headaches, sinus headaches, migraines. Those are the Mac Daddy of all headaches, right? And what we can get to, the symptoms can really range from the occasional annoyance to photosensitivity, and I can't go out into public and look into the light. I have to go lay down in a quiet room. So, even some people like that I'm talking to in the office, they're telling me about how they have, like, do you have any headaches associated with this neck issue you have going on? And they're like, well, I just have normal headaches. And not to laugh, but it's like, really, I think normal is no headache. So for me, it's like, it's amazing what this condition can do into rearranging what people think is normal versus abnormal. So when we take a look at it, we have to see that, help people see that there is an issue there and that they need help with that, and we need to fix that. So let's take a look at this. This one, I love this because this is I don't remember where I found this, but it's like the lady goes to the chiropractor. The pain starts in my husband's lower back, then it travels up his spine to his neck and comes out of his mouth and into my ears, and that's why I get these headaches. That, I think that's hysterical, and it's like, just break it out of it. It's like, we all understand that, stress can create headaches. In this problem, the headaches isn't the problem, it's her husband. She needs to get her husband taken care of and get his spine checked. So at the end of it, like most people, we have to talk about this because there's really a belief out there nowadays that the headaches are the problem. Really, when we take a look at it, we have to check our perspective on this, because the reality of it is the headaches are as much of a symptom as they are a condition. So when we see it, they become chronic, they get labeled as a condition, but really it's a symptom. And we have to understand what symptoms are. Now, when we're talking about our body signals program, this is condition-specific solutions. Why we do these workshops is the same. It'll be the same for any of these conditions, is because they're the most common conditions that our community is experiencing, and health concerns that our community is experiencing. So we want to give people better information so that they can make more informed decisions, so that they can not only get to feeling better, but to actually address the underlying causes. Like in this picture here, we see the tip of the iceberg. That's like the headache, and there's typically some sort of underlying problem, and we have to understand that our body is really, the symptom isn't the problem, it's just our body's way of asking for help. So when I'm looking down and we start seeing that, our body is telling us about something, that there's something there, there's a stress, there's something in our body that are in our lives that our body cannot adapt to, and we're in trouble. We need to address it. We need to really make a change so that we can really start seeing what's going on there. Isn't that a great warning system? I mean, when you stop and you actually think about it, our body is sounding the alarm and telling us that we need to take some action there, right? So the real key here, folks, is how we interpret the and respond to our body signals. So it's the interpretation of and the response to these, and that makes all the difference in the world. So are you the type of person that listens to your body? You're responding, you're making the changes, you're breaking bad habits, and you're stopping the damage and allowing your body to start healing? Or do you try and ignore them and press on? Maybe it'll just go away. Or maybe it's just a part of aging. There's all these stories that we see here. These are normal aches and pains, la 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 la. These are all stories that we tell ourselves. Or even worse, when we start to rely on repeated uses of powerful chemicals such as over-the-counter, even over-the-counter drugs accumulating over a time. These often are abused because people aren't taking 1 or 2, they're taking 6 to 8 a day or 12 a day. And so we're seeing abuse of over-the-counter prescription non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And that right there can create issues with our stomachs, everything. So anyway, we don't want to be taking powerful chemicals to feel less than well. So, what I said before, is our body smart or is it stupid? It's pretty smart. It's trying to tell us some things. So we need to make sure that we are listening so that we're not really just suppressing it and enduring this more than we need to. The reality of it is the symptoms are the tip of the iceberg. So who's ready to learn a better way? Let's go down and we'll take a look at what's causing us, what's driving some of these bigger issues here. Now, if you've been to any one of my talks, you've seen this. This is called the illness-wellness continuum. And really, when we're talking about symptoms, their symptoms are really telling us what direction that we're heading in. Okay, so we're either, when we're born, I say we fall in this neutral point right here, and that's really showing us, if you are born, you have nothing wrong with you, you're neutral. And then from there on out, if we're fed, if we're taken care of, we're loved, that we start moving towards a healthy wellness type of state. And when we grow, we need to continue to make healthy decisions and consistently so that we can grow healthy, meaning that we're taking actions that are allowing us to grow healthy and achieve that high level of wellness. So if we don't, what ends up happening is that if we're not eating proper foods, we're not having proper nutrition, we're even basically we're not eating well, moving well, or thinking well, we start to develop over time these signs, which are the observable phenomenon, like high blood pressure. We can see that. It might not necessarily feel bad, it might not hurt, but if left unchecked for too long, signs will lead to symptoms, which is really how your body feels. And so really when we're taking a look at that, we have to understand that symptoms are already telling us if we're already in a direction, we're already into the treatment paradigm. We're already into that sick side where we're leading towards signs, symptoms, and ultimately disability. And then the punchline here, folks, is a premature death, a death before we're done our time. So the reality of it is we know a lot of people here. And this illness-wellness continuum was actually, this has been studied in the 70s, the 80s, and 2000s. This is across the board. There's nothing here that really is in dispute. But really, it's where we are at when the signs and symptoms are. Or we use those symptoms to help us learn and better understand and get our way out of this paradigm and start moving towards that. Well, let's see what happens when we do, okay? So let's talk about why we're experiencing these to begin with. We'll talk about symptoms and dysfunction here. So feelings versus function. And remember this now, our nervous system controls and coordinates everything in our body. It's made up of our brain, our spinal cord, and our spinal nerves. So there's 3 parts to this central nervous system as we look at it. Now remember, as the nervous system braids out from the spine, all these spinal nerves actually attach to organs, tissues, and glands. They help our body know what's going on in those cells and what actions our cells need to take in order to function properly and maintain healthy function in an ever-changing world. Okay? So when we go outside and it's really cold, our body will shiver. That's a way of producing heat. This is our body's autonomic reflex of maintaining our core body temperature. So we have to understand our body will take these measures in order to survive. So remember, the motor nerves are responsible for our movement. But when they're interfered with, they can create those weaknesses, spasm, fatigue, and tightness. This is oftentimes what brings people into the office. Autonomic nerves are designed to help run and maintain healthy organ function. But when there's interference with it, we get things like sinuses, allergies, low energy, digestive problems, as well as high blood pressure and cardiovascular issues. So we have to understand that is an issue with our health. So really, when you think about it, we start to experience 10% of this nervous system is designed to help experience pain. So we see that pain, posture, our position in space, as well as hot and cold. The sensory nerves, if we're already experiencing pain, we're already experiencing some level of dysfunction and a symptom. We're really, it's like when you go to the dentist and you see signs of tooth decay, you're already you're in process of the problem. It's already en route. We need to make sure that we're taking care of these things and not letting it progress any further. So that's our body's way of, again, telling us to take action. So remember, 10% of our nervous system is designed to perceive pain. 90% of it is towards movement and function. So when we look at it, if we're already experiencing pain, our ability to move and function is probably in one way, shape, or form being affected as well. So we want to make sure that we're getting checked and make sure that we don't have anything going on with our spine as it relates to our health. So let's go and let's get back to the premises here, because when we talk about the feeling, we have to go and ask the better questions, because the reality of it is, if we think the headache's the problem, we're missing a big portion here. So we have to understand the best premises, and the ones that we use in our office. These are the ones that we need. Here's mine. So when we go through this, my premise here is that our body is designed to be healthy. Healthy is normal. Sickness is abnormal. Headaches are abnormal function of our body. So remember, we live in a world today where unhealthy is becoming common and normal. So it's becoming the norm. So we have to understand, but healthy is the normal default function. Number two, your body is smart. Your body is making great efforts to keep your body healthy and to deliver your body the best experience possible. So we got to understand that our body is smart. We have to start trusting to our body and listen to it when it's telling us that too much is going on at once. Our nervous system is the master control system. So remember, our nervous system is controlling and coordinating every single function of our body. It's estimated that we send 60 trillion bits of information between our brain and our body every single second of every day. Now there's 86,400 seconds in a day. So let me tell you, there's a lot of information that our body is circulating, that it needs to circulate in order to be healthy. It needs to be communicating back and forth. So our nervous system is controlling everything. Now, what protects our nervous system? Well, that's our spine. Really, when we look at it, our skull protects our brain. The brain comes down through the base of the skull and through the spinal cord and goes through the spine. And our spine really protects the spinal cord. It is our suit of armor. It allows it to stay protected, but it allows it to move. We have these freely movable joints in our body. So when we take a look at it, we've actually sacrificed, the design of the spine is we've actually sacrificed protection for mobility. So just like a suit of armor, where we're the most vulnerable to injury is at the joints. So that is a big part there. And now remember this, the number 5 and the last part is that our modern life is so unnatural. And it's so unnaturally stressful, especially when we're talking about our spine. We sit more than we ever have. We're using technology more than we ever have. And so we got to understand that our spines are basically wilting because we're not moving enough. We have no support for our spine. So it's very easy that we're seeing our spine is taking the brunt of this unnaturally stressful lifestyle, and ultimately our health suffers. So what's the answer? Like, what are we talking about here? What's the answer? Do we take drugs? Do we try to ignore the symptoms, or or is there a better way? I find that there's a better way. Okay, now what do you think? Here's a dangerous belief right here. Drugs work. Drugs fix my problem. I hear this quite often too. Somebody will be like, you know what? This Robaxa said it really works, but they have to take it every single day. And they take it all the time. And this is really, at the end of the day, it's not working. It's masking the symptom. So we have to understand drugs, it depends on what your objective is. The reality of it is when we look at the big idea here, we have to understand it right here. Drugs, remember, headaches are not the problem. They are the symptoms of the problem. Drugs don't correct the problem. They're actually changing the physiology through chemistry, and it's masking the symptoms of the problem. So you still have the problem, but the problem will continue to get worse over time until ultimately those drugs don't work. And then what will happen is that you're going to have to take different, stronger, more dangerous drugs. And with the size of the drugs, there typically tends to be a increase in side effects as well. So, you have a whole nother sort of new problems, if you will. So I always say, drugs, while it may save your life in a crisis situation, long-term drug use is typically not the answer to correcting and having any lasting change. So one of my mentors, Dr. Stephen Francis, said it best. He said, you can never drug your way out of a circumstance which you behaved your way into. You always have to change the behavior if you want to correct the problem. So I hope that made sense there, folks. But let's take a look at this too, right here. What about just giving it time? How about trying to ignore the problem? This kind of cracks me up. Have you ever ignored your way out of any problem? Like credit card debt, I'm just not going to pay that. Maybe it'll just go away, right? Does the problem typically get worse? Yeah, because with interest, right? So at the end of the day, the 5 most dangerous words in healthcare is maybe it'll just go away. My chest hurts, maybe it'll just go away. My head hurts, maybe it'll just go away. So it's really, at the end of the day, is nod your head if you know that you have to take action if you're going to get better results. Like, you got to nod your head on that one, because we have to take action if we ever want to try and solve the problem. But before we can solve it, we have to understand the problem. So let us take a look at the most common causes of headaches, and we'll get moving on this right here. So first, who agrees life is probably it's unnaturally stressful, modern life especially. I remember when I was a kid, it wasn't as stressful as it is now. I feel that in my bones, no kidding. Keep nodding if you think that life is getting more and more stressful each and every year. I know I have 2 kids now, and as they get older, they get cuter, and these 2 little girls are the apple of my eye, but I can tell I'm going to have some more stress, right? But all kidding set aside, they're going to school, they're getting into more and more activities, so I'm going to have to rearrange some of my time in order to accommodate what they need to do in their life. So, there is stress there, right? So stress comes at us from every angle. So we talk about it. Let's look at it here. We have the thoughts, which is, how we think about what's going on in our lives, how we think about ourselves. We can also have toxins. Those are anything from heavy metal exposure to environmental toxins, like we've had with the fires and the smoke over the summers, as well as it's the things that we put into our body through our diet. One of the biggest surplus of toxins that we take into our body is purchased at the grocery store. We're paying a premium for these toxins. And so we really, if you're a person who doesn't eat healthy, that is one of the easiest ways to minimize your toxin load, is to change your diet. And then let's talk about traumas. So we have thoughts, we have toxins, we have traumas, and really this is really how we eat, move, and think. But traumas, those are everybody can think of those big sports injuries, those big hits that can create injury, but we can also talk about those micro traumas, which is our cell phones, which is sitting there looking at our cell phone and doing that repeat forward head posture, or what we call flexor dominant posture. We start to see that can affect everything. Those micro traumas that we're doing every single day over and over again, whether it's sleeping on our face, driving in our car, our alignment and our ergonomics at work, these can all take their toll over time. And what we see is one of the biggest things that happens in our body and in our spine is we get subluxations in our spine. Now, let's talk about this, because what's a subluxation? Now, we talk about it, especially when we're talking in the neck. What we see is that the joints in the upper cervical portion of the neck, like here's lumbar vertebra here, they're big, they're strong looking. But when we get into your neck, the shape of the vertebrae start to change, especially the top two vertebrae as it relates to the occiput, which is the base of the skull. So when the base of the skull is sitting on the top of the spine, those top three articulations between CO, C1, and C2, as well as its relationship to C3, those top upper cervical areas are really held in primarily by soft tissue. So when we see that with this flexor dominant posture, because it's held in by soft tissue, it's so easy to displacement. So we see with that flexor dominant posture that these muscles start to get stretched, they get weakened, and then they become, we start seeing that we lose its position in those upper cervical areas. That creates soft tissue damage and inflammation, which ultimately that inflammatory process leads to nerve root irritation. And that's where we really start to sense and perceive pain. So when we're looking at this, the pain and the irritation will actually create the body's the first line of defense is to spasm. It's to lock those muscles down. Remember, our muscles' primary job is to move our body. The secondary role is to stabilize. So when something's irritated, it's going to just lock that area down and it's going to brace it. So just like if you sprained your wrist, we would immobilize that so you're not injuring the tissues over and over again. We'd actually immobilize that so that you would actually allow that tissue to start to heal before you would start moving it again. Same thing here, your body straps those areas down. So for a lot of people, that spasm will lose the motion of those segments, which ultimately affects the discs and leads to joint fixation. And that's where it's a locked-in subluxation. Your body can't move. The spine is not moving. It's moving abnormally, and that creates the alarm phase. So what we talk about, and that's a whole nother conversation, but when we talk about nociception, it's really negative input into our spine. So we see joint fixations that elevates the stress response, and so stress hormones are released. So when subluxations occur, the first thing we need to do is understand what's causing them and take action to make sure that we're getting properly addressed. So when we talk about that nerve irritation, that alters the function on the end organ. So when we talk about this, as we can see, we see this in spasming, we see it in tissue, we can also see it in atrophy in some cases where we see actual nerve entrapments that are coming off the spine as well as into the periphery, where we're seeing loss of, when those nerves are interfered with, we see loss of the circumference of biceps and triceps. We're starting to see atrophy in those muscles and weakness. So we can see how that can affect people. Now let's take a look at this, because here's the causes of subluxation. Now when we're talking about this, here's the bad habits. When we talk about bad habits, they're basically like drips in a bucket. So if you're that person who's stressing out at work, you're riding around and you have poor ergonomics in your car, and you're using your cell phone all the time, well, guess what? That's right there over and over and over again. Each one of those little episodes is wearing on you, and it's putting a pattern of stress on your spine. So when we talk about those micro traumas, they can add together in an equal one event that really it's too much for your body to endure, and it trips the switch. Now, when we take a look at it, there's the other way. There's the macro traumas. These are the car accidents, the sports injuries, the slips and falls, and even we see that in the birth process nowadays. We see that some kids in utero, some babies are being subluxated in the birth process. So it's important that we get our spines checked throughout life. Now, obviously, the stress and damage, the macro traumas tend to stress and damage the body. So soft tissue gets damaged right away. That's more of an event type thing. But the real culprit, there's really more to the modern life as the risk factors of what's creating most headaches in the current trends in society today. So micro traumas, this is the big one. We see it, right? We talk about, everybody says don't sweat the small stuff, but these micro traumas, really, they're drips in the bucket. Like, this is what we see, and everybody nowadays is on their phone. So we see it from, think about the airport. How often do you see people just staring at their phones all day? Because nobody wants to talk to anybody. They're all on their phones. So it's like these micro traumas create postural stress. And some of those things that are associated with sitting in front of like a computer monitor, that's what we call tech stress. So what we see is right now we're getting into this era nowadays where we're seeing technological stress is becoming one of the most serious threats, health threats of the modern world. So one of the things that we see right here, if you have a cell phone, this is what everybody knows, that if you use your cell phone too long, if you know somebody in your family is using their cell phone too much, that's one of the things that we see here is this tech neck. We see this flex forward posture where, again, we're stretching everything here. The muscles in the front of the neck are getting tight and shortened and restricted. And ultimately, we can see that this is putting wear and tear on our spine in a phenomenon that's just totally posturally related. So we have to learn how to use the technologies better, and then we can understand why it's bad when we don't, right? So after tonight, you're going to understand that. So let's talk about tech neck. Now you see right in through here at the base of the skull right here, here's where your cerebellum, your brain and everything sits right up in here, and then through the spinal cord canal enters the spinal cord, and it comes all the way down through here. Now what we're seeing is right in through here, we're seeing this is good alignment here, it's good alignment here, it's good alignment here, and then we're starting to see some degenerative changes right out here. So we have to start looking at this and say, hey, guess what? We're seeing that this can actually impact, the spine can impact us. Now let's understand that when we're supposed to have this arc of life here where we have this nice curve here, and that's really what it's designed to absorb the shock of our spine. So when you think about it, like if your wrist is here, if we were holding a bowling ball here, we want to have our hand up right here. This is where our wrist is going to be able to carry that the best. Same thing with that cervical portion of our neck, is we want to have our head up and we want to have a nice arc here. We call that the arc of life up top. Now, when we start to see today, when we start to get that tech neck, we're actually reversing that cervical curve, and it's putting a lot more strain in through here on those joints. And it's actually, those joints are being putting stress directly into the discs, which can ultimately lead to a numbness and tingling into the fingertips phenomenon, weakness into the biceps and shoulders. So we can see distal phenomenon coming from those spinal nerves. So how important it is that we use these cell phones properly, because there are real consequences here. It's definitely important. And it's posture. It was posture month in our office, or it is posture month in our office. So it's really, at the end of the day, is to make sure that you're getting those tools and resources and checking out those videos that we put out to help you better understand what exactly that you can do to help use these technologies better. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Now we talked about the bowling ball. Now let's take a look. Now here's our 12-pound neutral position bowling ball. Now imagine you got 10-pin bowling, so your fingers are in the ball here, and then you take a look. Say you have a 12-pound ball, and now I start putting my head like this. Isn't that going to put more strain on that wrist? And what happens when I do it like this, right? So all you have to do is really put a cell phone in front of somebody's face, and you can see what they're doing to themselves every day. So it's estimated that we can get up to 60 pounds of stress on our cervical spine when our head is 60 degrees flexed forward, which is the typical position in which people are using their cell phones today, is 60 degrees of forward flexion while they're looking down at their phones. And what we can see is that's stretching out the ligaments in the neck, it's stretching out the muscles, it's fatiguing, and we get all sorts of damage done to the soft tissue there. So the longer that our head is flexed forward, the longer it's going to take for our body to heal. And if it's left too long, we actually stretch those ligaments out, and it's what we call ligamentous creep deformity. So it actually stretches them out and they become hypermobile. So remember, when we're talking about this, the postural stress creates damage to the spine, that soft tissue. And so remember, that's your ligaments, your muscles, your tendons, your joints, and that's really what we're seeing is causing that. And then what we see is the more significant traumas that'll create stress to the nervous system and interfere with the body's communication with itself. So, remember, interfering with healthy function and healing is not the goal. We want to make sure that we're taking care of these subluxations as they come up in your body. So if you're a person who wants to be active for a lifetime, then we have to understand it. So let's go through it. Again, it's going to be the joint misalignment. That's going to be caught up through traumas or bad habits, really. That's really what create these. That soft tissue damage, inflammation, and irritation is the big one there. So there are many causes of the symptoms, right? So we have to understand that. So we have to be real cognizant in how we're using this. We have to be really conscious and mindful of how we're using technologies today and how we're sleeping, how we're positioning ourselves. And posture really needs to become brought back into the forefront of our minds instead of it being an afterthought. So often we see people that are experiencing headaches on a day-to-day basis, and it's really just because their posture is all sorts of off. They need help, and not only getting their body back into alignment, but they also need help in recovering and improving and balancing their imbalances, right? Correcting those imbalances is crucial to that. So oftentimes the symptoms or the body signals are going to show up, and that's going to be things like headaches, stress headaches, sinus headaches, and migraines. So let's start to look into this, right? Because remember, less than 10% of our nervous system is actually perceiving pain. So I don't want you to really, I want you to focus on that's literally 10%. That's less than that. So we're just really, most of it is already being affected. So that's what's commonly happening without pain or obvious symptoms. The most common symptoms of subluxations are no symptoms at all. So it might not necessarily hurt, but it's always worthy of being checked if you're experiencing those symptoms to make sure that your brain and your body are communicating. We say if there's a decrease in function, think of your spine as like the fuse box to your reality. When we see these areas of the spine, that especially that upper cervical area, when we're talking about the vagus nerve and vagal tone, that controls cardiovascular function, respiratory function, and digestion. So this is an important part, is to make sure that there's at least, if nothing else, if you don't take care of any other section of your spine, and make sure your upper cervicals are clear, because that there's so much up there that's going on that's helping to run the show. And you want to make sure that, especially if you're a desk worker, somebody who's got that forward head posture, you want to make sure that your spine and your nervous system are functioning at their best. Especially, so when we take a look down here, we can see that these areas of the spine can relate to all these other organs here. So that's just straight anatomy. So when we take a look at it, where there's neural relays here, if there's interference with those relays, there's going to be autonomic dysfunction. So we have to make sure that we're looking at that and measuring for that. So again, that subluxation can create all sorts of things. So we talk about that lost imbibition. We'll pick it right back up there. There's the soft tissue damage, the nerve irritation, the muscle spasm and pain, loss of motion in the joints, which can lead to arthritis, shoulder and elbow, arm pain, numbness and tingling in the wrists and hands, as well as headaches. This is the big part of it, right? So let's take a look at what a subluxation actually looks like on a plain film x-ray. So when we see, look here, we want to see that nice arc there. Now when we start to see these discs start to come together, they get herniated and squished back. That can actually squish discs back onto the nerves, and that will actually create those radicular symptoms where we get the numbness and tingling into our fingertips, into our biceps, into our triceps. So when we take a look here, we can see on this slide here that there's great space here. There's great space here. We're starting to get a little thin here, but we can see this here is really, that's a reversal of that cervical curve there. We can see how it's not even straight up and down. It's starting to go the opposite direction here. We're seeing lipping and spurring here, and they're getting early degenerative change. That's some pretty moderate to severe degenerative changes that are going on there. We're starting to see that. So there's a loss of disc space there as well. And again, that can create all sorts of issues with your body's ability to function and heal. So stress headaches. This guy looks really, really enthusiastic about his job there. So, and I'm just kidding. So stress headaches is life stressful? That's a big part of it. We have to understand, let's take a look at clinically what we see in our office with stress headaches. And so we're talking about cervicogenic headaches here. So as we go through this cervicogenic headache, we have to understand that the cervicogenic headache is typically in that C1 to C7, T1 to T5 range. This is typically a physical type of stress that we see, and this is the common desk worker's neck. So we can see that cervical spine, upper cervicals, C5, C6, C7. We're seeing that the upper T spine is just taking a beating from that flexor dominant posture there. So that's one of the things. Those are areas that we not only need to correct, you need to break the bad habits and get the imbalances and get an ergonomic assessment done to your workspace ASAP. So let's talk about sinus headaches, because a lot of times it's that time of year where everybody's like, my sinuses are acting up, everything's going kapooey, I'm getting sinus headaches. So what will show up with sinus headaches in our office is we'll see it's a little lower. It's that C2 area. So we're seeing C2, it can be C1. Typically you're going to see C1 and C2 can go together, but it's like when we take a look at it, is that it innervates the sinuses, it innervates the eyes, lacrimal glands. We'll see that inner ear as well as jaw, and we'll see that down in the throat as well. So we can also see a lot of throat conditions, things like that with that C2. So again, when we're looking at that, that's clinically what we're seeing, and that's typically where a pattern of stress is affecting C2, and then at the base of the neck, that lower cervical spine. So now we're going to get into the next one, which is the migraine headaches, right? Now there is a lot of migraine headaches, and the jury is really, it's still out on migraine headaches. Some people are saying they're estrogen based, they're vascular. When we take a look at it, oftentimes what we see clinically in a chiropractic setting, because we are focused on correcting the spine, we see what relates to the spine is typically, we'll see C1 will always be involved on some level, but we'll also see C6 to T3, so that upper T spine there, as well as when we get down into here, L1 and L2. So we'll oftentimes see that, because that'll affect the hormones down in through, that goes into the sacral plexus. So we can see that can affect the hormone, especially when we're talking about estrogen production, that can be altered down through there. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining and correcting those areas of the spine and that people are avoiding those triggers. One of the easiest things that you can also do if you're a person who suffers from migraines is to make sure that you're taking some supplementation. And I'm going to say that right here, with the biggest regard being the biggest supplement that everybody should be taking is magnesium. It's probably one of the most depleted minerals in our population, and it's a simple, effective way to help not only with cardiovascular issues such as hypertension type headaches. It can really help your body become more alkaline, and it can also help your body digest better, and it can help your body better regulate itself. So when we're talking about blood pressure, we're talking about blood flow, we're talking about hormone balance. Magnesium is a big part, and we really need to make sure, especially if we haven't really focused on nutrition, that we're looking to up our magnesium to 300 to 600 milligrams per day. So now remember, the dangerous belief is that, and this is one of the big ones, is that nothing can be done. The reality of it is, if we do nothing, do our problems get better or do they get worse? They typically get worse. So let's talk about the 3 steps to correcting the cause here. So when I take a look at the 3 steps of correcting the cause, we're going to take a look at this and we're going to talk about number 1 is breaking the bad habits. If we break those bad habits that are creating the problems to begin with, we have a chance. That's it. But if you're a person who hits your head on the wall every day and you're getting headaches, it doesn't matter what treatment you do. It doesn't matter if you're coming in for your adjustments. You're going to feel better, but until you go back to doing what created it to begin with. So breaking those bad habits and identifying those bad habits is a crucial step. It's putting on your thinking cap and really identifying what are these things that are contributing to this, and break those bad habits, make those behavioral changes. And if you don't know how, ask us. We're glad to talk shop. We love giving people information, tools, and strategies. But number 2 is you're going to have to add specific exercises, right? If you're going to sit at a desk, we talk about how technology is movement, how do you say it? It's our modern lifestyle is devoid of movement, and we're seeing that it's being engineered out of our lives at the rate of technology. So we have to add specific exercises and exercise programs, but mostly if we're sitting on a computer, we need to supplement it and make sure that we're combating and counterbalancing by doing some specific exercises for our necks, for our posture, and making sure that we're doing those consistently each and every day, right? And 3, this is the biggest one. If you're a person who's experiencing headaches or not experiencing headaches, is make sure that you get your spine checked and ultimately adjusted if necessary, because chiropractic adjustments can help transform people's lives, especially people who are headache sufferers, to have such a better quality of life. And really, that's the 3rd leg on that stool. So all 3 have to be there in order for us to really get lasting changes on that. If you're a person who's tried everything else and you haven't been to a chiropractor, then by all means, I urge you to get checked and make sure that you aren't overlooking a very crucial piece of that puzzle. Now let's go into here, breaking the bad habits. Remember that tech neck, postural aids, ergonomic aids are so crucial to us doing this. We see this lady here on the couch and she's sitting there just staring down at her computer. That can lead to chronic neck problems, nerve pain, even herniating, bulging discs. And that's when we're talking about that carpal tunnel-like syndrome, the numbness and tingling into the hands. We really need to start marshaling what we're doing to our posture on a day-to-day basis. So, we always say it like this: you will love these Y's, W's, L's, and T's. So the simple way to do this is to get your arms up, and you should do this 20 seconds in each position, one round for every 2 hours of being seated, right? So go up here for 20 seconds, holding your arms up, shoulders back, and then come down into a W for 20 seconds. You're going to hold it, and then you're going to come right out here, and you're going to roll those out to an L right here, and then you're going to come back up to a T. That's as simple as it gets. So you're going to hold each one of those for 20 seconds. You're going to do 1 round every 2 hours you're sitting. So I say, if you're one of those people who's sitting there doing this, that's your body's way of telling you it's time to go get some water, drink some water, and go do some movement. Get some movement in there. Get these the Y, W, L's, and T's. You will love them. Trust me. And if you do them consistently, you're going to see that it's going to have a big impact on your overall quality of life. So how do you know if you have subluxation? So this is one of the things that we talk about in our office. When we're talking about your spine, what we use 5 criteria in our office. We look at instrumentation. So we use static electromyographs to measure the muscle tension patterns. We look at infrared thermography to look for nerve root irritation in and along the spine. We also use motion and static palpation as ways of identifying areas where the spine is not moving correctly. And then also visualization. We do complete postural analysis to identify compensations that your body is going through. And ultimately, we'll use number 5, we use x-rays if necessary to make sure and confirm that that's indeed is the problem that's going on in people's spines. So at the end of the day, we have 5 very objective criteria there. And I would say where there's smoke, there's going to be fire. So we're always looking for that. The case management, when we talk about it, and we listen to your stories and concerns. We want to figure out what exactly you're doing in your life that also is contributing to this, because we have to identify those bad habits as well. So let's go. Remember that the 3 steps to correcting the cause here is 1, breaking bad habits, 2, adding the specific exercise, and 3, getting the adjustments to the spine. So remember, when we're talking about this, they're highly specific adjustments that are gentle, and they're there to correct that subluxation and realign that spine, get it normal function and motion to those segments so that your nervous system can actually start to normalize its input and output, and you can actually have better communication between the brain and the body. So this is safe, it's effective, and it's the largest drug-free approach to health in the world. So really, millions of people get adjusted each and every day, and they've been doing so. Happy birthday, chiropractic, this month, 123 years. It's amazing that it's been that long, and people are still, to this day, I talked to them, they haven't had their spines checked. So one of the things, again, is make sure that, how do we know if you have a subluxation? You have to get checked, right? So we're going to use all of the instruments, all the motion, static palpation, posture analysis, and x-rays to identify what it is that is driving your health concerns and get to the root cause of it. So when we talk about it, if you're that person who's sitting on the fence there and you're wondering like, hey, guess what? You know what, this makes sense. This is something that I haven't looked into and I probably need to look into, then you're the type of person that we want to partner with, come alongside and make sure that we can help you reach your health goals. That's really at the end of the day, is so that you can get back to living a life that inspires you and your family. So at the end of it, what we do is in our office is typically, it's $175 for the first initial examination. But I believe in removing barriers, because a lot of people will say, well, I don't know. One of the things that I always kind of makes me hesitant is I don't want to spend the money because I'm not sure if it's going to work. So what we do is, I believe in rewarding action. It's because you're on this webinar, that means you're an action taker. You took the interest, you took your time, and you watched this all the way to the end, and you have I believe that's worth a reward. So really, all you have to do is let our office know. You say Body Signals Headache Workshop, referred you in, and you're going to get that at our friends and family rate. And that's really good. That's $75. So you get $100 off your examination. And that's really just to help you remove the barriers so that you can get in and get checked. I always say it like this. I want to know if my headaches are being caused by misalignment in my spine versus something more sinister going on. And that's an easy way to rule it out, is just to get checked. So remember, that dangerous belief is your problems will just go away if you ignore them. Remember, one of the biggest reasons that we're in a healthcare crisis nowadays, and it's really largely in part, is maybe it'll just go away, or that procrastination mindset. So the third reason that we really are, and the quick and easy of it, is we have to take action. We can't procrastinate. We cannot wait any longer. We have to start taking control of our health and getting it. And I'll tell you what, if you do, I know you're going to experience a change in your quality of life that will last you a long time. And the road to health, healthy is the new sexy by every stretch of the imagination. The road to health has never been more accessible. So for those of you, thank you very much. I hope you learned something from this. Please, if you've gotten something out of this, give us a thumbs up. Give us a question if you have any concerns. We're gonna talk about this. We'll get back to answer any questions that you may have. If you want to book an appointment, you just go ahead and you click on we'll have a link you can click on our website and schedule an appointment, and our team will get right to you. And all you have to do is let them know, again, that you were on this Body Signals Headache Workshop, and that's how you heard about it. And you're going to get our friends and family rate. That'll get you $100 off your initial exam. All right, everybody, until the next time, take care, be well, and enjoy the rest of your night.